We have one of our staff, her homeland is up in Alaska, and she's working on a very critical and important topic that it actually is a priority in these hallways as far as mitigation for climate change. It's a false solution. So we're going to have Adrienne explain what this is and why she's here. Adrienne.
Unanotak everyone, mga Aakaluk, good afternoon everyone. I'm Aakaluk, Adrienne Blatchford. I'm from Unalakleet, Alaska. It's a small coastal community up on the northwest coast of Alaska, right in the heart of the Norton Sound. We're the passageway to the Arctic. And, in the Arctic, we're seeing climate change 4 times faster than the rest of the world. And it's created a lot of chaos and industry-induced climate disasters, and that has led to these false solutions being promoted within these spaces, which are tied to industry. These techno fixes they're calling them geoengineering, which is a way to use technology to mitigate the climate, whether it be in the land, the ocean, or in the atmosphere. And they're being proposed as a way to be able to reduce emissions, but they're rooted in these petrochemical and extractive industries that are at the heart of this climate change that we're seeing today.
I've studied some of this technologies, and it's just insane that fossil fuel polluters are using this now to greenwash their pollution. They're not cutting back. They're not reducing the concentration of greenhouse gases, fossil fuels. They're even expanding. So can you explain this manipulation and modification of the stratosphere? What are they doing on this so-called solar radiation removal technologies? And why is that bad for our people, our land, our animals, our fish, life itself?
So, with the atmospheric manipulation, they're wanting to spray chemicals into the ocean or take salt water into the atmosphere, or take the ocean and turn it into a protection layer, so-called protection layer over the earth. But once these are deployed at full scale, it would have to continue for 100 years. And the amount of chemicals and the amount of manpower and the amount of energy it would take would far supersede the emissions that are already in place and that are already increasing. And it also would cause droughts in areas now that are already experiencing water depletion, and that it would cause typhoons and the increase of other winds in areas that are already experiencing these climate disasters, flooding zones, sinking of lands, sinking of islands, and coastal erosion. You name it, it comes in increase when these projects are being deployed as so-called experimental deployment at full force. And they're using not only these technologies in the extractive industries, but they're also going into universities and wanting to use that as a way to deploy.
Tell us a little bit about the Arctic Ice Project. And it's through the effectiveness of yourself and Paganga on just networking, reaching out to other Alaska people, and like the whalers, and addressing some of the financiers of the Arctic Ice Project. And what was that? And why is that a manipulation of the sacred?
So Arctic Ice Project was founded by Leslie Fields, who was originally working for Chevron and 3M, where she had patented several different technologies and wanting to use those technologies to increase the albedo of the ice and deflection of the sunlight to increase the thickness of the ice. But she was wanting to use silica glass beads, which kind of represent they're about the size of baking soda. If you pour baking soda out, it flows like liquid.
Wow.
And she was taking these, and it started out in the Bay Area, and it was a group-funded project that had a crowd-funded project. So she had started out there and moved up to Aakaluk and had contracted with UIC Aakaluk Inuit Corporation, which is a subsidiary of Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, who is also holds hand in hand with all of these extractive industries on the North Slope. And Leslie had started doing some testing out there on a lake in Aakaluk without the free, prior, and informed consent of the communities up on the North Slope, reaching all the way down to my area. And she was wanting to move from Aakaluk and deploy in full throughout the Fram Strait and the Bering Strait to increase the albedo of the ice. But once we caught wind of that, we knew that this was going to impact not only our ecosystems, our food sources, but also how we're going to be able to hunt and gather on the ice and on the land and on the coast. This would carry on with the wind because of those high wind forces that we see in the Arctic, and it would cause a disruption in the ecosystems all the way from the biomes of the ice and in the oceans and in our waterways and our systems, and carry all the way across, because our wind systems go all the way from Alaska to Japan and circle all the way around. And so we knew that if there was full deployment, that it could possibly erase our cultural identity and our food systems. And so we showed up in full force, and we also were joined by several other people from around the Bay Area, and we had folks join us all the way from Hoopa Tribe, drive down to join us in the action and to show up and to stand the line and hold the line to fight back against Leslie in this crowd-funded project that they were doing. And it was shut down this last year, but she didn't take no for an answer and has kept going and moved on to a different project. And we continue to hold the line, and we'll continue to fight back against these technologies, because we know as Indigenous peoples how to steward the land and how to steward our resources, only taking what is needed, and since time immemorial, have left little to no carbon footprint. And Western science, our Indigenous knowledge supersedes that, and we know that. And so we continue to show up and to share that message with folks that are proposing these false techno fixes.
Thank you, Adrian. And as you, the audience, want to Google search on these false solutions, geoengineering technology, IEN is part of a global alliance called HOME. And it's very important also to check out other NGOs. E as in Edgar, T as in Tom, C as in capitalism. ETC is a group also that generates some literature, geoengineering monitor. So there's a lot of information out there that we will continue to put out on how these geoengineering technologies can negatively impact our life and our future. It does include carbon capture sequestration, CCS, that might be in your backyard. A lot of money's coming to our tribes to join in on building CO2 pipelines across native territories. And the gas that goes through that is highly explosive. The risks are really high, and it does not address climate change. It actually contributes to it. So continue on, and as you get to know the work that we're doing with Adrienne, she attends the United Nations Plastics Treaty, another area where the producers of plastic who depend on fossil fuels, they don't want to cut back on plastic. They're fighting people of the world who are worried about plastics contamination, the chemicals, it's burnt. But also it goes into the bodies and the fish, the whales of the oceans and seas. So thank you very much. Keep tuned to our Red Road Voices from COP30. Thank you.